Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live session of using Showbie in the classroom. My name is Erin. I am the School and District Support Lead here at Showbie. So I'm just going to start things off by saying welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. While Chris is going to primarily be driving this webinar, I just wanted to start with a few housekeeping rules before we really dive into the meat and potatoes of this webinar. So as you'll note, we are using GoToWebinar today as our tool of choice. We will be having an opportunity at the end of the session as well for any questions that you might have. So please keep that in mind as you're going through. If questions do come up, we will be able to answer those. There are two ways to ask questions in this webinar. So on your little toolbar on the side of your screen, you're going to see a little hand. So if you click that, it just indicates that you've raised your hand. Yep, so somebody just did that. That's perfect. What that'll indicate is that you have a question that you'd like to ask, and we can actually take you off mute at the end to ask that live. Alternatively, you could also type your question in the question box if you would prefer for me to just kind of navigate those questions as we go through, and then we can again answer those at the end as well there. So keep that in mind, two options for you in terms of posing those questions, and like I said, we'll get to that at the end. In the meantime, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Showbie Champion Chris Lawson. Take it away, Chris.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me on this Wednesday evening. Hopefully this evening I'm going to go through lots of different features of Showbie, but most importantly give a real life view, having been using it in the classroom for sort of the last 4 or 5 years through its development, and including some of its newest features as well. So hopefully giving you a real overarching understanding of Showbie, and if I can give you some inspiration along the way, then I'm going to be doing a good job. So welcome to the session. First of all, a little bit about Showbie. So it's founded quite, well, it's still a baby company in 2012, and it was designed as a powerful tool for iPads originally, but also now is most certainly not just an iPad app, and hopefully as we go through you'll see that. It's extremely easy to set up, as you'll hopefully see, and it works on nearly any device, and that is going to, as I can show you this evening, is a bit of a game changer really in comparison to some of the other apps out there, with that it works cross-platform. So we were one of the first schools on board in 2012. The school I'm in has just over 200 children. It's a primary school, and it has both iPads and PCs. And one of the main great things about Showbie was how quick and easy it was to set up. So a little bit about me. I was previously a Year 6 teacher, and now I'm down into Year 1, where I'm having a great time, and the children are having the opportunity to use one-to-one iPads, or sometimes a shared iPad setup. It is something that's been going in the school for the last couple of years, and one of the things which we have seen is our results due to Showbie, and the way of putting children at the heart of their learning and personalising their learning has increased our attainment over the last 4 years, achieving top 10 in 2014 a while back, and top 1% in 2015. More recently, the impact in Year 3 has empowered them to do things that they haven't been able to do with the iPads and Showbie. Hopefully, you'll get to see that in action this evening. However, before we start, I just thought I'd bring this screen up and just show you that this evening we have got lots of different people with us. Most of the people who've signed up for this webinar are new to Showbie, have been using it for less than a year. There's an even spread of people who are using it daily or weekly or monthly. There are teachers, there's educationalists from reception all the way up to university. But most importantly, they're all here to find out about one thing, and that is Showbie. On the right hand side there, you can see some of the different applications that you use, and again, all these work and integrate in some way into Showbie, that hopefully you'll be able to see as we move forward. So how can I phrase or place Showbie into some words? Well, actually, it was quite difficult to come up with a sentence, but I found it's a foundation to my classroom. It allows me to personalise my learning for all my children, and to support challenge, or to support and challenge, whilst keeping in touch with the important matters in children's lives. And so tonight, I'm going to be not just talking about the fundamental or basics of Showbie, but maybe using it in a slightly different way, and how we can get the most out of it. So it's the heart of my classroom. It reduces workload. My business manager is happy because it reduces paper waste and printing costs. And it's practical and easy to use. And once you put yourself into it, then obviously a lot can come from it. You can store and manage a wide range of resources for varied subjects in the primary classroom and secondary. And there's ease of use, so other staff have picked it up really quickly. Just a couple of key things to point out here. We've got the fact that it's something that can personalise learning. It's accessible to use. Its feedback is incredible when we start looking at the voice notes in a little while. The marking, the journey, the fact that we can have a portfolio which stores the children's best pieces of work to share with the parents. It's cloud-based. It's also got mark books and things like that in pro features. So there's masses to get into, and obviously tonight I'm going to try and just dust over the top of all of them, but at the same time going into some key aspects which I think are really important. So first of all, Showbie is not just an iPad app. It works across platform. It means that there's no restrictions to one device. So at the moment, my class have been using an iPad and then have been picking up the work that they've completed onto their PCs when we've gone into the IT hub. And also they can get things from home. So a couple of children wanted to finish off a piece of work, so they logged in at home and were able to pick it up and complete it and send it to me. And these are children of 7 and 8. It also includes and is compatible with lots of different file formats. You can draw on photos and PDFs, but also you have the opportunity to upload Excel documents and Word documents that can then be opened in the native device's operating system. However, that's what I think, but what do the children think? Well, I asked 2 of my lovely lot, and they said that one of the things is that they can tell Sir how they've done and how they think they've done in the lesson. He can then listen to me and reply to me. It's exciting when I come into school and see that I have a message or a task waiting for me. Another child said it's great to talk because Sir talks directly to me. And we have lots of children in my class, so he can tell me things that he might not be able to if he didn't use Showbie. And when I started to talk to this child in particular about it, the thing which was fascinating was that the child was basically sharing that what they took the most was that they felt that the feedback was the most detailed that they got. They felt able to understand the feedback, but also it was thorough. So it was maybe me going through, I'll show you in a minute some example. I can show you now. An example would be on the application itself. So this is my live class. This isn't a setup class. This is a real class. And I'm just looking for a piece of work here. There we go. So it's only short, but there's inscription, there's scribing on the top of it, and then actually for some children, as I can show here, on the same piece of writing, there were some pieces of audio feedback. A good effort, Evie. I would have. And again, I'm going to show that in a little bit more detail in a minute. So it was that level of feedback that the child felt was the most important and something it didn't always get or haven't had in the past. Welcome to the couple of new people who've joined us. I'm now going to talk about the voice notes. So the voice notes are for both the child and the teacher, both in year 3 and year 6. Some of my children really do struggle with constructing sentences and reading, if we're being honest. That was in year 6 and it's the same in year 3. And this is where Showbie's accessibility features, or not maybe always intended accessibility features, have absolutely transform a classroom. So we can see on the right hand side, that's where the child may be able to record what they thought of their piece of learning, or even instead of writing it, they could record exactly what they were going to write down. But on the right hand side, this is a worksheet for some children looking at the different types of seeds and plants. And what you can see is on the right hand side, the voice notes have started to be recorded there, which is me basically reading out their piece of work, or the piece of writing on the right hand side of that. And again, that means that they can articulate and communicate their thoughts without restrictions that they'd normally encounter by writing or by reading. They also can access longer texts as voice notes that are used as content. So some children, one child in my class, really wanted to read a book called Kenzuki's Kingdom, and it was just too much for them, and they really struggled, and they didn't always have the opportunity to have a parent read to them at home. So what I ended up doing was I read the first with expression and modeling the correct use of reading. I modeled that to that child and gave them an opportunity to listen and actually follow the text through as well, by taking a photo of the page or pages. So it also means that children can give more detailed feedback and explanations because they don't have to type it or write it. We use my White Rose Maths Hubs in England, or in my school in England, and one of the main things with this is reasoning. Now, some children find it really difficult to reason and also to write, and as a result, this is fantastic because they can audibly explain where they've got to with their work and their learning journey, what they found difficult, what they found hard, or how to answer a certain question. We can see here some more examples of the annotation and feedback. This to me is the biggest feature in Showbie. It's the best feature in my opinion. I know Erin might have different a viewpoint on what her favorite thing is, but for me in the classroom that I use all the time, day in, day out, this is by far the best thing. It means that I can create post-it notes that stick onto the child's work that can be dragged and moved around. It means that I can record a voice note which might give more information about something. Again, I'll show you a live version of this in a second. But it also keeps an eye on you know, you can write things as well, and you can model good handwriting. This is used with an iPad Pro, but again, it works with any iPad. And I know for a fact that the annotation features are coming more and more into the web app for back to school as well. And I know Erin will pick up on that towards the end. So one of the major things with regards to feedback, which is different, is class feedback and individual feedback. So I've got an example here. I'll show you another live example in a second. But here we've got me talking to the whole class. So hi everyone, I've just read Noah's fantastic writing on Friday and just wanted to share this with you all. But instead of taking a photo of it, I actually read it out with expression so that child could hear what their work was like, published work was like. And then I gave feedback to this individual child, and then I said, also take a look at Evie's work above. What beautiful piece of, what beautiful presentation and brilliant content too. So that gives the children the example, or it gives them the opportunity to see what a good one looks like. And that isn't saying that other children's work isn't great. I try and rotate that round, but it also can share something that I might not have been able to explain in the lesson. And children have a fantastic way of taking learning and transforming it and moving it on. Inbuilt with this is the idea that we can build different levels in our classroom. So myself as a teacher, I quite often use children called lead learners. And what lead learners do in the classroom is they take on the role of the teacher once they've covered something that's important to them. So, for example, if we have a look at something that I've done quite recently with the children, we did some maths tests. And so what I did is I chose certain children. You can see the annotated ones of the children here. And what I did is I created individual feedback for these 14 children whilst I was marking their test. So it wasn't additional workload, it was just the iPad was recording, and because I have the Pro version, it can be up to, I think it's 30 minutes of recording. I've never used that much, but I know for a fact that I have used 5 or 6 minutes in the past, which I think is the limit for the free version, the basic version. But if we look here, Basically what I've done is I've recorded some, so you'll be able to hopefully hear this when I play it. Okay, Harry, question number 11, you need to recognise where the equal sign is, but I am going to do a video on that. Question 12, you needed to see that it was asking for 3/4, not 1/4. So that's real high quality verbal feedback, but that's just as I'm flicking through the test. I'm not adding time to my workload because I'm marking the test anyway. And also it means that the child can come into school, plug themselves in using their headphones and just listen back to that before I've even had a chance to come and speak to them, and hopefully be able to amend some of the things before we move on. But then on top of that, using other applications, so this is an example using EduCreations. I've created a link. Okay, going to look at this question first. So it says 65, add something, take away 35 equals 65. So we know that this side has to equal 65. 61 is 20. So again, perfect example of how using different applications within the classroom to come to one purpose. But going back to the PowerPoint and just explaining, or the keynote, and just explaining this a little bit further before we move on. Great to see some questions are coming in, thanks. I'll get around to answering those in a minute. We can see here that there is, we've got teacher, lead learners, and the whole class, and that's really important. So we got the teacher, the lead learners with those 14 children, and then they each worked with another child. And that was where the whole class were then engaged. Thanks to Erin, who's just clarified that it's 1 minute for a free version of Showbie. And if you talk like I do, that might not be enough. You could do more than one voice note, but for me, that gets quite, well, it adds more time. So if you can afford, or you're in a position for the pro, then that's something that I don't have to particularly worry about, especially when I use it so much in my classroom. Thanks, Erin. So moving on, that's really important, not only for me as a class teacher, but it's also really important because it's teaching them skills with more of an emphasis on them working collaboratively. And that's a really important skill to possess. Another feature which we use in our classroom is something called group discussions. This is a pro feature, and we've been doing some research on gender and the impact that that has. We've also been doing some discussions about what boys and girls stereotypically do as jobs, but also what boys and girls can do for jobs. And again, that's really important. Here you can see that the children have had a little discussion. Now, mine are year 3, and we found it a little bit tricky, but when I was in year 6, children used to bounce off each other with questions and ideas, and it was fantastic to see. And hopefully, as the year goes on, the children in year 6 will be in a more of a position. In year 3 will be in more of a position. Here, you can see I work with another 3 key stage teachers, and we use this as like a notification board. So if there's anything going on in class worship or assemblies or a change of break time or a focus on behaviour for a week, this goes in here. And something that isn't on this screenshot, but I am using and looking at in the future is working across schools. So we've got now a group set up for moderation of writing, and we've also got another group set up which is working with a cluster of our local schools, hopefully sharing ideas and best practice. So again, some other examples of group discussions that means that you don't have to just do it with your children, you can do it with the staff, but you can also do it across schools as well, which is fantastic. Okay, moving on now to learning outside the classroom. If there's anything that you can think of so far for questions, if you want to put that into the questions box or the chat, or you can raise your hand, not literally pressing the button, and we'll be able to ask you or get some question and answer from you at the end. So moving on now, when I was in year 6, the year 6s took their iPads home, or we could log in at home, again using iPads or PCs, Chromebooks, Android devices, even phones. And this meant that children could work on revision tasks at home, but based on what they needed to work on. So homework wasn't generic, but it was planned and tailored to an individual. And one of the newer features coming out, which is looking at folders, which I'll touch on a little bit later, will make that even easier. And I'm going to hopefully be able to touch on that a little bit more. But it made homework fun and interesting, but most importantly relevant. And children there was more of an extension to the classroom. So children were able to maybe log on and see the work that they'd done during the day and work on it a little bit more if they felt that they needed to. A couple of children had maybe tutors or things like that, and they could show their tutor what they've been doing in learning in class. Again, because the way that I use Showbie, which might be different to other people, but I have like a class flow. So I just have maths for the summer term, and then here is all the tasks and pieces of learning. Here is some activities, but then we've got, this is a great example. This is where a child has gone on and has made part whole model and then has explained it using the voice notes.
First, I counted the red counters, and I had 7.
Great stuff. Can guess where that's going on from. But again, this wasn't on the Monday webinar, so lucky you guys. But here it gives you another example, but this is the workflow, so we can see what's happening in the classroom. My senior leadership team can see what's happening, what sort of tasks are being set. Unfortunately, recently our iPads have been traded in for some new ones, which are yet to arrive, so that probably hasn't got as much stuff as it normally would. However, there's lots of examples. Here's a PowerPoint from Grammarsaurus, and I've uploaded that and things like that that children can use. And then we've got the new highlighter tool, which has been used in this piece of writing here as well. So lots of examples of how I'm using it in the classroom, and hopefully spurring you on and giving you some ideas. And again, I'd love to talk about how other people may be using it within their settings, because I know for a fact that I can learn off you guys as well as you hopefully taking something from this tonight. So moving on to something that I'm very passionate about, and it's how I first started to talk to the guys at Showbie, and it was based around the fact that I use my iPad not only to help with the learning journey, but also to communicate with my children, because I know I had 35 one year, I've got 32 this year, and I know that I can find that quite difficult to communicate with them all. It's even more difficult and challenging in secondary school, where I have worked, and I know where I was training to be an RE teacher in secondary school, and I maybe saw 400 or 500 children and saw my form tutor group for 20 minutes. It's difficult to get those and build those relationships. So in secondary school, it is very challenging, but equally in primary. So we can see here where I set something up called a buzz box. And on the buzz box, children are able to communicate with me and talk about how they feel, or talk about what's gone on at home or at school, or if there's anything that we need to talk about. So here was one child sort of asking for a little bit of a one-to-one chat and time, and I found out that actually it was because they had something quite heavy on the heart that they wanted to talk about. Another example here about the cloakroom. Another one here where it's fine, nothing to worry about. And then I placed back, hope you're feeling better now. And then it was, please, can we talk? So obviously something wasn't quite right, wasn't resolved, hadn't been resolved as well as we'd have hoped. And again, it was really useful to pick that up. And then the one on the left is quite a personal one, hence why I've taken out names and things like that. But it was about a child who actually lost his mum, and Showbie basically gave this child an opportunity to talk, gave this child an opportunity to type things that they might not want to say out loud, type things because they might not want other people to know that we were having a conversation or a talk, because they wanted to be private about it, so that they don't feel self-conscious of sometimes having to speak to a teacher, or if they want to, they can say, I'd like to speak to you. And it brings shiver down my spine to see it, because I'm not 100% sure, well, I know, knowing the child as well as I do, or did, as they've now left, don't think this person would have come and talked to me if they didn't have that opportunity on the buzz box on Showbie. And that to me is priceless. And so, it was a real turning point for me about how we can use technology, not just in the way that it's been designed, but for different uses. And I know the guys at Showbie were quite surprised to see it being used in this way, but equally they were like, yeah, this is a great way to use it. What a fantastic opportunity to use Showbie slightly differently. And again, if you've got any questions about that, or anything that you'd like to sort of discuss further, then I'd love to talk about that, because it's sort of my passion. But also I'm the head of safeguarding in the school. It also has led to a couple of disclosures which have helped to protect children, again, because they didn't feel like they could talk openly to a teacher. But also it's written down, the communication is there, and that's really important as well for evidencing purposes. So yeah. Now it's ease of use, so not only for the children, for teachers to use, but also for children. So this is one of the children who is going to upload some writing. Now, some people talk a lot about using iPads too much and not having writing in books. And this is something that I've used quite often, where the children will take an image of the piece of writing that they've done. Yes, it takes 30 seconds, but it also creates a portfolio of learning. And if someone picks up the book, they can see the writing in the book. But if they pick up the iPad, they can see the iPad, and they can see the writing in the book on the iPad, hopefully with some really rich and detailed feedback on there as well. Quite often, I will write lots of little numbers, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the actual writing, and then I will speak my feedback to the child, and they will be able to follow through. So I'll say, look at point 1, look at point 2, point 3, you need to put a fronted adverbial in, point 4, look at your spelling. So again, it's just giving that more rich and varied feedback. And then the child will then go on to rename it and adjust it, and so that allows the child then to create that portfolio that you saw earlier. They can also then favorite that by just clicking here, and that means that it can go into their portfolio if you're a teacher is a pro member. So an example where it's not iPad based, because that's really important too. So as I alluded to earlier, we've had a slight issue where, well, not issue, but we're trading in our iPad minis for some of the brand new iPads. And obviously the trade-in times and things, it's taken a little bit of time to come through. And as a result, we've been using the PCs more than we have done previously. So we actually typed up some letters of persuasion. So this was to Nerf, because the children went and researched and found out that they had only boys on Nerf guns and not girls, and all the girls were outraged. And some of the boys wanted to play with Lego stuff for girls, or that was marketed for girls, and so it gave them an opportunity to write a letter. And you can see here I'm not using it on a Mac, but it's the same on a PC. But you can then just pull up the piece of work, edit it, and then if we wanted to, we could re-upload that to Showbie. In fact, I'll just show that because it's unbelievably easy. So we go into Showbie, and then we can literally just, it's not going to let me do it, but you can drag and drop into Showbie, or you can just press the plus button and do it that way. Unfortunately, it won't let me do it just because I'm on this presenter mode, but okay. So moving on and just looking at, let's have a look. That's making up. Again, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, do start getting those in, because we've got probably about 10 minutes left before the question and answer session. So looking at some other little bits and bobs for you now, I'm just pointing you to 3 case studies. This one's about assistive technology and how Showbie's been used to help children with special educational needs communicate effectively, and I know that the guys at Showbie are really proud of that, and it's a fantastic read. Another one about how personalised learning has taken place in a school in Dubai. And finally, my one which I mentioned to you previously about the emotional impact of Showbie. So those 3 are just there as signposts to you of maybe different ways that you could use Showbie, thinking outside of the box maybe a little bit. We also were thinking, or I was trying to think to you about how you could use it differently for different purposes. So I know there's some people on the webinar who work in music, and so a perfect example would be children recording their pieces of or their performances, and you having the opportunity to listen back to that. That could also include listening at home, or they could record their pieces at home, or if they go to band practice, they could record their band practice, or the solo if they go to voice coaching. And that's one example. Another example would be there's opportunity for movies, so to create home movies and to share those. In languages, there's opportunity to hear speaking and listening, maybe for the teacher to demonstrate how it should be said and the child to have a go at saying it back. And a perfect example would be in PE, where the teacher could upload a child, for example, doing a dance move or vaulting or something along those lines, and then the children being able to appraise that because they can see it on their iPads too. So you can upload movies into Showbie, and again, there are different limits depending on which version you're using. But something which I maybe haven't particularly made clear so far is that there's so much of this that is free. There's so much of this. It's one of the only apps that I know that doesn't lock down masses of things for teachers to use. I could quite happily use the free version, but once you've got experience of the free version, you want to use the pro features because they give you so much more and the impact is even greater. But it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk for Showbie and share, because actually a lot of teachers can use the free version really well, and then hopefully using the free version really well can speak to the senior leadership teams and say, hey, let's really make this great, let's make this practice great. Okay, if you are anybody in England or Europe and you've got an email, then over the last few weeks or months you've been bombarded with GDPR, but it is really important. As senior leader in our school, we know that we've been looking at this to make sure that we are compliant to avoid fines. And Showbie is data protection compliant. And it's really important. They are dedicated to respect the protection of your privacy. And as a result, they've put everything in place. And there's lots more information around GDPR compliance here, and if you wanted to contact either Erin or Privacy at Showbie for any questions on that, you can do. It's all based around having a Showbie admin in the school, and if you don't, then basically using Showbie, you agree to the terms and conditions of use. But I'm a Showbie admin for my school, and I've had to sign something to make sure that we're all compliant. So, touched on this earlier, the difference between the basic and the pro features. So the basic has unlimited classes per teacher, but up to 10 active assignments. So what I mean by that, if I just go off, we can have unlimited numbers of these, which I've not got many of. We can have unlimited ones of these, and within however many of these you've got, you can have 10 active. Now let's see, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got more than 10 already, but that would mean that you can archive them. So these ones here are archived, so they won't show on the children's devices. Well, they won't show when I archive it like that, but you can then get them back, and that's really important too. So you can go and you can find the archived assignments, so you can see how many over the time I've used. So that's one limitation, but still makes it more than usable. 10 active assignments, I think I could probably do with that. Upload files of a generous 25 meg, so quite a lot of PowerPoints or PDFs. Recording, just there for clarification, recording voice notes of up to a minute. Uploading videos of up to 1 minute. There is some web app and in-app support, but you do get priority support on Showbie Pro. The annotation tools, which are so important, and those pinned voice notes, which I've taught lots about. Scheduling assignments, so you're setting it up maybe at the start of the term. So next couple of days, I'll be setting up all my learning for the next 7 weeks before we finish. And there is some preloaded lesson plans and things, which is in beta and some great use there. Showbie Pro. All the features are basic, plus unlimited assignments, 500 megabytes of upload, which is just crazy, but gives you such great opportunities to upload bigger documents, bigger files, 30 minutes of voice note recording, and 10 minutes of video, And then these are the features which I did talk about. So class discussion, we've mentioned, groups we've mentioned, and how we not using just that in school, but across schools. Co-teaching I've not mentioned. That's where, so for example, my teaching assistant is my co-teacher. So they can access and see all the things that the children are doing. If you, we have used it in the past where teachers have job shared over Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday. So there's that continuous contact. The portfolio that I touched on, where children can upload, or the teacher can upload or select pieces of information. Gradebook, where you can actually mark and use it for marking, and parent access, which links into the portfolio feature. So that just gives you an understanding of the differences between basic and pro. Like I said, masses of usability within the basic version, but once you've sort of started to use the basic version, well, you can see I went to pro, and there's a reason for that. So the annotation tool, which is available in basic, is amazing. So it's got the pen, it's got the text feature, it's got the highlighter feature, the voice notes feature, the text box feature, all based around in this free app. But again,
Chris, if I can also just interject there as well, just as a note with the annotation tools, what you're seeing here is an iPad, or an image of an iPad screenshot. So the one difference that you're going to find between the iOS version and the web version is we don't currently have the pen tool available on the web version. So it's just good to keep that in mind when you're looking at those differences. But like Chris mentioned earlier, our web team is working really hard to bring that up to parity. So we're hoping to see both the pen and the highlighter on the web app as well. The pinned comments, the pinned voice notes, and the text tool are all also part of the web app. Sorry to interrupt there, Chris.
No, thanks for that. So I can actually show an example of that. So if we go on to, let's see, a random document, you'll see here that you've got the ability for the pinned comments, the voice note, and the text. But like you said, at the moment, not the annotation tools, but I know you guys are working really hard on that. And I know I'm for one very excited for when that comes. Moving on to here. So the pro features, which I think I've touched on, we've got gradebook, class discussion groups, the portfolio and reactive assignments, and the longer voice notes. The highlighter tool, again, on the iOS app. And these are the new features. So these are the ones which are coming. And one thing that I have said, I don't think I've said it in this webinar, but previous ones I've done, basically is that Showbie always listen to teachers. So if I said, hey, listen, this would be amazing if this could be done, or wouldn't it be great if we could just rewind a little bit in our voice note, or the child doesn't have to listen to the whole thing again, or so they've worked really hard. Now this class folders is where within a class you can set different assignments, you can set homework, you can set different guides and resources, and that's going to be really useful for organizing the classroom. So at the moment they're all based in one, but hopefully with the folders we can see that you can have different posts within each one, which is going to be fantastic when that arrives. And secondly, the one which I'm really excited about is the easy and efficient differentiation. So that's where I'm going to be able to upload a document to certain children, or maybe even certain groups of children, and be able to basically give them that information. At the moment, what I have to do is I have to post it, and then they have to select from basically the feed of whatever I've uploaded. But going forward, that's going to be really useful for those times when I really do want the child to do a particular piece of work. Instead of having to go around and say, okay, I want you to do this one, I want you to do this one, I want you to do this one, I can send it out a lot easier than having to upload it to each individual child. So again, that's been from some really useful discussions with Showbie, and that's come about. And we can see here a lovely little article about back to school from Cameron, that goes into the sneak peek and an idea of what's coming, and goes into a little bit more detail, which is fantastic. And then I also just thought I'd signpost you to on the main Showbie website, the features tab. which goes into everything that I said in a little bit more detail, and it looks beautiful, and you can do lots of clicky things, and yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. So it gives you an opportunity here to have a little look after this webinar, or maybe you're watching this back, not live, but you're watching it back later. There's an opportunity there for you to have a look in case there's anything that you're not overly sure on. But that leads me nicely to the final thing just before we have any questions. So if you can start sending your questions in. We have got a couple of questions, but if you can start, if there's anyone else who's got some to send in, please do so. Going forward, what can I suggest for you guys? Well, the first thing is to set up assignments ahead of time, and just learn by doing. You can't break it. You can always delete an assignment if you do it wrong. The setup's really easy, so you just give the child a 5-digit code and then they join that class, and then all the assignments within it. Plan your implementation. So in the last webinar, we're talking a lot about how if you explain things to the children or explain things to the staff, the impact is greater. So it's not just, right, we're using this app and let's go, but okay, we're going to use it for this reason and because the feedback's really useful, or this, that, and the other. And start simple with maybe just one feature, like the voice notes. I started with voice notes and it's still the one which I use more than anything else. Maybe have a co-teacher to join your class for additional support. And then obviously the guys at Showbie are just immense at helping and answering any questions that you might have. And that segues wonderfully onto question and answers. So Erin, I know you've been monitoring and keeping an eye on the questions as they've been coming in. And if there's anything else you can think of I might have missed in this one, but I said in the last one, or whatever it may be, then do ask away those questions now. But really, this is an opportunity for you guys who are watching live to ask some questions. And it's also an opportunity for anyone afterwards. If you're watching this back, then please do get in contact with either erin@showbie.com or support@showbie.com. And if there's any particular questions which you want to ask me, then I know the guys will forward that on. So over to you, Erin, and I'm looking forward to some question and answer.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we do have a few questions in here as well. Just quickly before we kind of jump to those, I just typed in my email as well. So like Chris, it's just erin@showbie.com, very easy. So if you do have specific questions that you want to send my way that you'd like for me to pass on to Chris as well, happy to do that for you. We always love to hear from our attendees. Yes, Chris, lots of questions have come in. Simon, I know you had a few questions that have popped into the question box here. I also see that your hand has been raised. So I'm going to assume that maybe you'd be okay with me actually unmuting you so you could ask those questions yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Simon, I've just unmuted you. So if you want to kind of take it away, Chris and I are both listening to those questions.
Thanks very much, Erin. Chris. I actually pressed the hand up by accident because I was just fiddling with buttons, but we got my first question really is about devices in schools that are not maybe one-to-one.
Sorry, Simon, it looks like we have a little bit of audio kind of coming in and out with there. I'll try and unmute you one more time here, but if it doesn't kind of clear up, maybe I'll just read your questions out, which you've kindly typed for us. So just give me a second and we'll give this another shot. Okay, try saying something again, Simon. Yeah, okay, so sorry, Simon, I'm gonna mute you here because it sounds like, it kind of sounds like you're talking in a bucket, so we're having a bit of difficulty understanding you. So if you don't mind, I'll read out your questions, and then if you need clarification, just feel free to type in more with the questions there. But I do see quite a few, so I'll just kind of go through them one by one. The first question that I saw you had here was, can Showbie be used in schools where there are not one-to-one devices or where devices only form a part of the teaching and learning? So this is a great question. Chris, I'll toss this to you to kind of take on here.
Yeah, definitely. One of the reasons why we're actually moving to the newest iPads, just very briefly, is the fact that it can have the shared iPad feature. So even if you don't have one-to-one, when the child logs into their part of the iPad, they will still be able to use their Showbie account. But we also, at the moment, we don't have one-to-one, so we do have enough, like, as a class set, but the children can basically just, because it's cloud-based, they can just sign in and sign out as Showbie with really simple usernames. So that's one way around that. But most certainly can it be used where only devices form a part of a teaching and learning. By all means, it can be used, as I said, as a really high quality voice and verbal feedback tool. And I know many schools have that in their professional development or something in the school development plan that they want to work on. And also with the way that the DfE and the government in England have been talking an awful lot about workload, maybe how that can be used to reduce workload for teachers and also make sure that the responses are most impactful. So I don't think there's a limitation. I think it's one of those great apps that you can use it as little or as much as you want. You could use it for one aspect or you could use it for the whole thing. But for me, I wouldn't use a server any day over Showbie for the simple reason that I can access this at home where I can't access a server at home based in the school that I'm in at the moment. So that's certainly one major aspect. Yeah, I think that's it, Erin, on that one.
So then I've got another question here from Simon, which I'll go to next, which I think is a very, very interesting question. Have any parents at your school, Chris, felt that it removed a little of the personalized human contact with the children? If so, how did you convince them of the benefits of this?
Not at all, for one reason. As you might have seen the examples which I showed there. If I just try and find them. These are just a few. I mean, you can imagine the amount of interactions that I have with the children on a day-to-day basis. However, you can see here, none of these were where I've spoke to them only over Showbie. So quite often it's them giving me a hint or, sir, can we talk, or sir, can we do this? So here, this was where we'd had a chat, and then this followed on from it. The same here, sir, please can we have a talk, and then it comes from it. So I don't particularly like to use it too much where I'm typing to the children, because actually for them, if they're wanting to tell me something important, they're going to want to tell me, and they're going to want to see my face-to-face, my responses, my facial feet, how I react to them, to comfort them and to reassure them or whatever it may be. So again, no, I've not had anything along those lines. Mostly I've just had parents who have rung and said, listen, I've found out that your child's a little bit down or a little bit sad, or the things at home are starting to affect them a little bit or worry them a little bit, and they've been quite grateful of that. And when I've explained that it's come about because they've had the opportunity to message me and tell me how things are, then that's one example where it works really well.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Chris. Simon, I know you have a few other questions, and we'll get to them all. I'm going to pop over to a question that Adrian had specifically about, looks like voice notes. His question is, how do you manage the noise levels in your classroom so that children can A, record themselves, and then B, hear it back?
Great question. We use earphones, and it does take a little bit of training. And on the example which I showed, the child proper went for it and proper started shouting, but that's fine. But what we can see from that is they basically plug themselves in the morning in case there's any feedback that's been given, and then they can hear it back through the headphones. Alternatively, if we actually ask our children to bring in their own headphones. Quite a lot of children have them lying around. If not, we have some school sets. But then if not, it might be a case of they have to turn it down a little bit, and I give them 5 minutes to listen back to the feedback. It is a great thing and a question, Adrian, and it's something that at the start when I didn't use the headphones feature, it was something that I certainly did struggle with. And then we've gone from there, and now it's just inbuilt into the classroom and inbuilt into the teaching and learning. It doesn't impact at all. And quite often you'll hear children, especially this example, it was quite interesting because I'd included a lot of the test feedback on these 2 videos which I shared with you. So halfway through the feedback, the children would just go and plug themselves in and listen to question 17, for example. And some of the children may then have reported back and said, oh, I did this really well, or I did this, or I found this quite tricky, or I found this quite easy, or whatever it may be. I don't think anyone did on that one, but they have on previous ones as well. So yeah, it works really well, to be honest, but again, very important to think about how you use it going forward.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Chris. Popping back to Simon here, another question that he brought up, which I think is really interesting. What about copyright issues with Showbie? If you took pictures of the pages from, in this example, Kensuke's Kingdom, the book you were talking about earlier on in the webinar, is this okay?
I think would be a major issue if you were uploading a whole book. But for example, within teaching and learning anyway, you quite often will read a page to the children. You'll quite often maybe photocopy a page to annotate and look at key features of of a piece of writing. I do accept your point, and I think, I don't know what Michael Mulperger would think of that. However, I would say up and down the country in UK and wherever it may be, there are many teachers who will photocopy a segment of a book to share with children. An example I can use though is the third space learning. Here we go. The first space learning, they did these Fluent in 5. Now these were sent out free or to our school, and we've uploaded those because the free resources and they want us to use them. So I understand your point about Kensuke's Kingdom. I can't honestly say I'd thought about it too much because it was just sort of a page of a book. But I would hope that Michael Mulperger was really happy that that child got to listen to his read or to his writing that he wouldn't have otherwise been able to hear.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I don't know a lot about copyright myself either, but I do know that here in Canada, there are kind of laws around what they call kind of fair use of copyright material, where you can use, as you said, sort of snippets of it. Of course, we'd probably see some issues if we started uploading entire books or entire works or materials into Showbie to be distributed. But I think small chunks like we see in classrooms tends to be okay.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
Okay, another question here from Simon. How do your colleagues feel about using Showbie? I see you have marked and commented on work on weekends and late into the evening. Have your staff been comfortable with this?
Yeah, because I don't know, there's quite a few attendees here now listening in, and I would assume quite a lot of people do mark at weekends and late into the evening. What I would say is that it's about, we as a school have a policy based on a work-life balance, or a fair work balance, and what that means is it's however much I feel is right for my children. Now, if I were to use some examples of where I've marked long pieces of writing, it's taken me less time to mark it verbally than it has to write my responses. So I think, and for the other teachers who've used it, they've sort of said the same things. It's less time because they're not having to write, they're having to speak, and that they feel that the feedback is more, the feedback is more detailed, or it's helping to move learning on further. Late into the evenings, quite often what I'll do is I'll lock an assignment that I am working on so that it doesn't sort of send to any children, because my year 3s especially do not use their iPads, do not log into Showbie at home. But when I had year 6, a couple of them took iPads home, or they logged in via the web app. So I didn't want, if I'm working at 10 o'clock, which is absolutely fine because I'm within my right to do that, or 11 or whatever time it is after I've maybe been out for tea or whatever it is for the next day's learning, then I don't want that coming onto their devices. So the guys at Showbie explained a workaround for that, which and also, like you said, just looking back, have the staff been comfortable with this? Yeah, because there's been no pressure on the staff to do anything if they don't want to. There's been no pressure on them, and we've not trialed it in every single class in school. We're still, we've really embedded it in 2 or 3 classrooms, and some teachers they don't feel that that's important right for them, maybe in that year group, or right at their time in the stage in their their teaching, and so we've not sort of pushed it on teachers. But yeah, no issues, and I don't really see the difference between marking and commenting on work at weekends on an iPad versus in a book, other than it's online. And as long as the children or the staff aren't seeing that, then it works. It works for me. Yeah, and I know quite a lot of other Showbie champions who I've spoken to. It works for them as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Chris. Simon, I saw your comment here. If normal copyright rules apply, that's fine. Just wondering if there is some sort of exception through Showbie. Great point. Yeah, so it's basically the same copyright rules that apply in the classroom apply in Showbie, right? And rules and laws are going to change across the countries as well. So what might apply here in Canada might be different in the UK. So I'd say your best bet is just to kind of keep an eye on your own local copyright rules. So thanks for that. Popping back to Adrian, he had a few more questions here as well. Adrian wanted to know if you could show how you organize your classes by subject, by term, by groups of children.
Yeah. Now, Adrian, you asked at a time where basically at spring, I had a massive spring clean, and I pretty much got rid of an awful lot because I wasn't happy with the way that my class was set up. I originally had it where I had my classes for English and for maths and so on, but what I found was that I was missing work because I might have been going in and out of one. So I brought it all into the one feed. So here I have different tasks. This is an English task, for example. This is where I wanted the children to fill in a Google form, so just sent them the link for that. There's some little work tasks there. This was an art lesson where I just posted some images. So at the moment, and then obviously the iPads went a couple of weeks ago waiting for the new ones. There's probably not as much on here. But if I go back, you can see maths book feedback in January, an addition and subtraction. I think that's a test. Trying it on your iPad, things here. So I like to do it where it's all in one, and that's maybe because I'm working with year threes, and sometimes just getting them to the right place and then getting them working, especially at the start, was quite difficult. Now it's just like picking up a pencil to them. We know exactly where they go in, we know exactly what box to put it in. But for them, I found it very easy of go to year three and go to English summer term 1, and your work will be waiting for you there dated. In comparison to maybe having an English one and then having within the English one all the different dates. Now, having said all that, I can't wait to see the new features that are coming out for Showbie with regards to the folders, and I might look to organise my my work slightly differently when that happens. But at the moment, it's working pretty much all right with regards to that.
Awesome, thanks for that, Chris. I feel like you know, Showbie is very much very flexible in the way that you can organize it. So for Chris's example, he put all of his students within the one class and then kind of categorized his assignments for each of those subjects that he was addressing. And then he had mentioned earlier that, you know, initially he had maybe created classes based on the subjects that he was teaching. So there really is no limit to how you want to organize your own Showbie account. And with the additional upcoming folders that you're seeing glimpses of there, there will be even more options for organizing that as well. So lots to kind of play around with. Like Chris had said as well, you can just go in, play with it. If you don't like the way it's organized, delete it, start again. Like you said, you won't break Showbie.
If I was to do it again next year, Erin and Adrian, I might do it a little bit differently and go back to having per subject. And the only reason for that is if we were using it across a school or across maybe 2 or 3 classes or whatever it may be, if I had a maths one, then I could invite I'm in charge of maths, so I might be able to see what's going on because I could be invited into the maths class. So then I could see what's going on in year 3, 4, 5, and 6 maths classes, for example. So it might help with my monitoring. But I'd obviously, that's something I'd speak to my staff about and see if they felt comfortable with that. But it is an option. There's probably more options by setting it up like that rather than just sort of all in one. But yeah, that's where I've gone with it, and I'm all for trialing and seeing which way to work. And I'm even, as I'm saying this now, I'm thinking, maybe I could try that next time, and maybe in September.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all based on what your needs are as a teacher in the classroom. I mean, we look at sort of mid-level year teachers and how they organize. They might be organized based on just teaching one subject to different groups of kids based on a period or something like that. So you could break it up into periods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or like Chris had said, subjects or class years. So there is really no limit to that. I do see that you have one more question here as well, Adrian. Chris, what do you have the children who don't have an iPad do when half the class are on Showbie? Do you have parallel activities or teach aspects twice?
It doesn't happen very often. We do actually have we are looking, in fact, we have a class set that we have half the time and it's shared with another class. But if I did only have half, I'd probably do my input, and then if it was a worksheet or something, they'd probably share one between two. But if it was voice notes, yeah, I would probably just plan a parallel activity. And especially for teachings actually on the iPad or the feedbacks on the iPad, once they've had that feedback, they can then get cracking with the learning. Doesn't happen too often, but when it does, I guess it's just the same as maybe having two activities running parallel in the classroom, as your question sort of suggested.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So that kind of wraps up the questions that we currently have here. We still have a few minutes if anybody has any last minute questions that do pop up. Simon, I apologize that we couldn't get your audio to work, but thanks so much for asking those questions. Both you and Adrian really kept the conversation going here. If there are no other questions in the meantime, please know that you're always free to reach out to us. Chris has support@showbie.com down there at the bottom. I posted my email in there as well, so Erin@showbie.com. If the question's for me, I'm happy to answer it or find the answer for you. If it's for Chris, I can always pass it on to him as well. And you can always reach Chris at his Twitter handle there, at mr_l.edu. So you have some options for getting in touch with us. Please do. We always like to hear from you. But in the meantime, I'll take this opportunity to kind of wrap up the webinar for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, thank you so much, Chris, for taking this on and leading us through this. Your perspective is invaluable for us here at Showbie and for those who are looking to dive into Showbie as well. So thank you again.
No, thanks for the opportunity, and I hope it's been beneficial for the guys. But like I said, if there is anything else, then they must get in touch, and we can certainly. I know how much you guys bend over backwards to make sure that people are happy and informed, and I know you continue to do that.
For sure. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Sam. Bye, guys.